My name is Kevin Morgan, 56 years old, and I never imagined my daughter's wedding day would become the stage for my greatest humiliation and eventual triumph. After 30 years in manufacturing, being laid off last year left me reeling, questioning my worth. When my new son-in-law introduced me to his powerful boss as an unemployed loser, I felt my world collapse. But what happened next changed everything. Before I continue this incredible story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated. I spent over 3 decades building a career in manufacturing management. Starting on the production floor right after college, I worked my way up to operations director at Midwest Fabrication, overseeing hundreds of employees and millions in production. Manufacturing wasn't just my job. It was my identity, my purpose. That all changed 14 months ago, when global market shifts forced our company to close its American facilities. At 55, I found myself unemployed for the first time since college. I still remember my final day clearing out my office while younger colleagues whispered about their next opportunities. Nobody was whispering about opportunities for me. "You'll find something soon, Kevin," they said. But their eyes told a different story. We all knew the reality: manufacturing executives my age weren't in demand. I was too experienced, which is corporate speak for too expensive and too old. The first few months I attacked the job search with the same determination that had fueled my career. I updated my resume, networked with industry contacts, and applied to every suitable opening. The responses were always polite rejections or deafening silence. By month 6, my confidence was shattered. Each morning I'd kiss my wife Emily goodbye as she left for her teaching job, then spend hours staring at my computer, sending applications into what felt like a digital void. My identity as a provider, a successful professional. Everything I thought defined me was slipping away. My daughter Amanda was my bright spot through it all. She'd call daily sometimes, just to chat about nothing important, but I knew she was checking on me. Amanda had always been my greatest pride, smart, compassionate, and determined. When she announced her engagement to Jackson Pierce, I was genuinely happy for her, despite my personal struggles. Jackson worked at Bennett Financial, a prestigious firm with an intimidating reputation. He was ambitious, polished, and clearly destined for success. The kind of young man who wore success like a tailored suit. Under different circumstances, I might have admired his drive. Instead, I felt inadequate in his presence. From our first meeting, Jackson's handshake was firm, but his smile never reached his eyes when he looked at me. He asked about my situation with the detached interest of someone discussing a minor news story. When I explained the factory closure, he nodded with what looked like pity. "Tough break," he said, "but maybe it's time for a change anyway, right?" Manufacturing is basically a dinosaur in America. 30 years of my life dismissed as a dinosaur. I wanted to explain the complexity of global manufacturing, the value of American production expertise, but something in his expression stopped me. He'd already made up his mind. Emily noticed my withdrawal after these interactions. "Don't let him get to you," she'd say. "He's young and hasn't faced real challenges yet." But his attitude stung because it reflected what I feared most, that I was obsolete, a relic from another era. As the wedding approached, my financial situation grew increasingly strained. The severance package was dwindling, and unemployment benefits barely covered our basic expenses. Amanda insisted she didn't expect us to contribute to the wedding costs. "Jackson's parents want to handle everything," she explained. I knew she was trying to spare my pride, but it was another blow. I should have been able to give my only daughter the wedding she deserved. During one wedding planning dinner, Jackson casually mentioned the cost of the venue. The amount was more than I'd made in 6 months at the height of my career. When I choked on my water, he laughed. "Don't worry, Kevin. We've got it covered." The way he said my name instead of Dad didn't escape my notice. Neither did the subtle look he exchanged with his father. Each planning session became an exercise in swallowing my pride. Jackson's family discussed flowers that cost thousands photographers, with celebrity clients, and wine selections with price tags that made me dizzy. Meanwhile, I sat silently, the unemployed father, with nothing to contribute but my presence. The night before Amanda's dress fitting, I found her crying in her childhood bedroom. When I asked what was wrong, she hesitated. "Nothing, Dad, just wedding stress." "Amanda," I said, sitting beside her. "I've known you for 28 years. That's not your wedding stress face." She wiped her eyes. "Jackson says you seem uncomfortable around his family and colleagues. He thinks maybe you should skip some of the pre-wedding events." My heart sank. "Does he want me to skip walking you down the aisle too?" "Dad, no. Of course not. He just thinks he's worried you feel out of place." I took her hand. "The only place I need to be is by your side. If Jackson is embarrassed by my unemployment, he's not embarrassed," she interrupted, but her eyes told a different story. "He just wants everything to be perfect." Perfect apparently meant minimizing her unemployed father's visibility. I nodded slowly. "I understand. This is your day, and I'll do whatever makes it easier for you." That night, lying beside Emily, I confessed my fears. "I think Jackson is ashamed of me." Emily propped herself up on one elbow. "Then he's a fool who doesn't deserve Amanda. But what if he's right? What if I am just a washed-up has-been?" She touched my face gently. "Kevin Morgan, your worth isn't measured by a paycheck. You built aircraft components that keep planes in the sky. You mentored dozens of young people who still call you for advice. You raised a daughter who lights up any room she enters. Unemployment doesn't erase any of that." I wanted to believe her, but as the wedding approached, Jackson's subtle digs became more frequent, and my confidence continued to erode. Each day brought me closer to a celebration I could no longer afford to enjoy, and a son-in-law who seemed determined to remind me of my failures. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Belmont Club, a members-only establishment, where Jackson's father held a legacy membership. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished mahogany, and servers glided between tables with practiced precision. I felt like an imposter in my 10-year-old suit, surrounded by people who vacationed in places I couldn't pronounce. Jackson's parents, Richard and Diana Pierce, hosted the event, with the practiced ease of people accustomed to entertaining. Diana air-kissed cheeks and laughed at all the right moments, while Richard held court at the bar, discussing market trends with the confidence of someone who controlled them. "Kevin, there you are." Diana approached with two elegant women in tow. "These are my dear friends from the symphony board. I was just telling them about Amanda's unique upbringing." The way she emphasized unique made it sound like Amanda had been raised by wolves rather than a middle-class manufacturing executive and a teacher. "Unique?" one woman asked. "Well, you know, public schools and all that. But she turned out wonderfully despite it. Just shows her natural breeding." I bit my tongue as they moved on, wondering what these women would think if they knew Diana's natural breeding included a father who ran a successful plumbing company, hardly the aristocratic lineage she pretended to. Across the room, Jackson was introducing colleagues from Bennett Financial. Young men with identical haircuts and women with sleek ponytails clustered around him, laughing too loudly at his jokes. I recognized the performance of corporate camaraderie. I'd participated in similar rituals during business dinners throughout my career. "Dad, come meet Jackson's work friends," Amanda called, waving me over. Her smile seemed forced, her eyes pleading. I straightened my tie and approached the group, extending my hand to the nearest young man. Kevin Morgan, Amanda's father. Right, the manufacturing guy, he replied. Jackson mentioned you were between opportunities. That's one way of putting it, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Tough industry, another commented. My father-in-law was in steel, had to reinvent himself completely at 50. Now he manages a hardware store. The unspoken message was clear. This was my future too. Not recovery, but diminishment. Actually, I began preparing to explain the complexities of global manufacturing shifts when a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. A tall, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair had arrived. The room's energy immediately shifted toward him like iron filings to a magnet. Jackson straightened his posture and smoothed his already perfect tie. Walter Bennett, Amanda whispered to me. Jackson's CEO. Walter Bennett. The name was familiar from business news. He'd built Bennett Financial from a regional firm to a global powerhouse. His presence at my daughter's rehearsal dinner emphasized just how high Jackson had climbed. Jackson immediately abandoned our conversation to greet his boss. I watched as he led Walter around the room, introducing him with obvious pride. They made a slow circuit, deliberately working their way through the important guests first. I slipped away to the bar, where Emily joined me. Holding up okay? She asked, squeezing my hand. Just counting the hours until it's over, I admitted. I overheard Jackson telling someone you were struggling to find your place in the modern economy. She said, her voice tight with anger. As if you're some dinosaur who couldn't adapt. My face burned with humiliation. He's not entirely wrong, Em. He absolutely is wrong. You built systems that revolutionized production efficiency. You developed safety protocols that became industry standards. This isn't about your skills being outdated. It's about corporations valuing quarterly profits over experienced leadership. Before I could respond, I noticed Jackson approaching with Walter Bennett in tow. I straightened my posture instinctively, years of business meetings having conditioned this response to authority. Jackson breezed past us, pointedly avoiding introductions. I caught the slight smirk on his face as he guided Walter to meet Amanda instead. The message couldn't have been clearer. Her unemployed father wasn't worth the CEO's time. Later that night, I overheard Jackson in the hallway outside the restroom speaking to a colleague. Amanda's great, but her family situation is a bit embarrassing. Her father's been unemployed forever. Keeps talking about manufacturing like it's still 1995. His friend laughed. At least your in-laws aren't asking for handouts. Not yet anyway, Jackson replied. But I'm keeping my distance professionally. Don't want Walter thinking I come from that kind of background. I slipped back into the main room before they could see me, my face burning with shame and anger. Emily found me staring into my scotch. What happened? Nothing. I lied, not wanting to upset her further. Just wedding jitters. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying Jackson's words, each repetition stoking my anger. By morning, Emily could tell something was wrong. Kevin talked to me. I sat on the edge of our hotel bed. I heard Jackson last night. He's embarrassed by me, by us. He told someone he's keeping his distance professionally, so his boss doesn't think he comes from that kind of background. Emily's face hardened. That little— No, I interrupted. He's entitled to his opinion. And honestly, would you want your boss knowing your father-in-law has been unemployed for over a year? It's not exactly a point of pride. It should be. You lost your job because of corporate greed, not personal failure. Anyone with half a brain would understand that. I shook my head. The world doesn't work that way, Em. Not his world, anyway. She sat beside me. Then his world needs changing. But for now, this is Amanda's day. We'll get through it with dignity regardless of what Jackson thinks. I nodded, trying to focus on what mattered supporting my daughter. Yet as I knotted my tie, I couldn't shake the feeling that the wedding would bring more humiliation. I just didn't realize how public it would be. The morning of Amanda's wedding dawned clear and crisp, a perfect October day. Sunlight filtered through the hotel curtains as I sipped coffee, trying to calm my nerves. In a few hours, I would walk my only daughter down the aisle. Despite everything, I felt a surge of pride thinking about the moment. Emily emerged from the bathroom, already dressed in her mother-of-the-bride outfit, a subtle blue dress that highlighted her eyes. After 32 years of marriage, the sight of her still made my heart skip. "You look beautiful," I said. She smoothed her dress. "And you clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Morgan." She straightened my tie with practiced hands. "Ready for the big day, as ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to sound confident. We arrived at the bridal suite just as the makeup artist was finishing with Amanda. When she turned toward me, I momentarily lost my breath. My little girl, who once wore fairy wings to the grocery store and made me check for monsters under her bed, stood before me looking radiant and impossibly grown up. "Dad," she smiled, reaching for my hands. "What do you think?" "I think Jackson is the luckiest man alive," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "The photographer captured our moment together, Amanda, in her wedding gown, me trying not to cry." Emily discreetly handed me a handkerchief when a tear escaped. "Dad," Amanda said quietly when we had a moment alone, "I want you to know how much it means that you're here. With everything that's happened this year," I squeezed her hands, "wild horses couldn't keep me away." She hesitated, then added, "Jackson's been under a lot of pressure at work. His boss being here is a big deal for his career. If he seems tense today." "Say no more," I assured her. "This is your day. Nothing else matters." The ceremony was set in the garden of the Westbrook estate, with white chairs arranged in neat rows and an archway covered in flowers marking the spot where Amanda and Jackson would exchange vows. Guests filled the seats Jackson's side, noticeably larger and more formally dressed than ours. As the music began, I offered Amanda my arm. She took a deep breath and smiled up at me. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart." We began our walk down the aisle. With each step, I focused on maintaining my composure, on being the father she deserved. I noticed Jackson at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes fixed on Amanda with genuine awe. Whatever my feelings about him, his love for my daughter seemed real in that moment. When we reached the front, the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" "Her mother and I do," I replied, my voice steady. I placed Amanda's hand in Jackson's, leaned in to kiss her cheek, and took my seat beside Emily, who squeezed my hand tightly. The ceremony was brief but beautiful. Amanda and Jackson exchanged vows they had written themselves. Her words spoke of partnership and growth, his promised success and security. Their different priorities were evident even in these intimate declarations, but their joy was undeniable as they were pronounced husband and wife. The reception began immediately afterward, in the estate's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, and elaborate floral arrangements adorned every table. The cost of this single event probably exceeded my annual salary in my final years at Midwest Fabrication. As guests mingled during cocktail hour, I found myself standing awkwardly at the periphery. Emily was engaged in conversation with Amanda's college roommate, and I didn't want to interrupt. Jackson's colleagues from Bennett Financial clustered together, occasionally glancing in my direction before returning to their conversations. I grabbed a drink from a passing waiter and tried to look comfortable alone. A few of our family friends made their way over, offering congratulations and carefully avoiding mention of my employment situation. "Beautiful wedding," my old neighbor Frank commented. "Amanda looks radiant." "She does," I agreed, grateful for the simple conversation. "How's the job search going?" he asked, lowering his voice. Before I could answer, Jackson's father appeared, clapping me on the shoulder with uncomfortable familiarity. "Kevin." "There you are. Come meet some of our friends from the club. They're dying to hear about Amanda's childhood." Richard guided me away, his grip on my shoulder just shy of forceful. As we walked, he muttered, "Try to keep the unemployment talk to a minimum, would you? Some of these people are potential clients for Jackson." My face burned, but I nodded stiffly. For Amanda's sake, I would endure this indignity. The reception dinner featured 5 courses each, more elaborate than the last. The head table where Emily and I sat with Amanda Jackson and his parents fell into an uncomfortable pattern. Jackson and his parents discussed people I didn't know and events I hadn't attended, while Emily and I smiled politely, essentially excluded from the conversation. Eventually came time for the toasts. As father of the bride, I was first. I stood raising my glass, suddenly aware of hundreds of eyes on me. When Amanda was 7 years old, she decided to build a treehouse. Not just any treehouse, an elaborate 3-story design she'd sketched on construction paper. I explained that we might need to start with something simpler, but she looked at me with complete conviction and said, "Dad, just because something seems impossible doesn't mean we shouldn't try." Gentle laughter rippled through the room. That determination has defined Amanda throughout her life. She sets her sights on what matters to her and pursues it with heart and intelligence. "Jackson." I turned to my new son-in-law. "You're getting not just a beautiful bride, but a partner who will believe in possibilities even when they seem out of reach. That's a rare gift." I raised my glass higher. "To Amanda and Jackson, may your life together be filled with love, growth, and the courage to pursue what matters most." The guests applauded warmly. Amanda wiped away tears, and even Jackson nodded appreciatively. His speech, by contrast, focused primarily on their future success. He thanked his parents for their generosity, his colleagues for attending, and his boss for taking time from his busy schedule to honor us with his presence. Amanda was almost an afterthought, described mainly as the perfect partner for the journey ahead. As the evening progressed and alcohol flowed freely, the atmosphere loosened. The dance floor filled, and even Emily convinced me to join for a few songs. For brief moments, I forgot my insecurities and simply enjoyed celebrating my daughter's happiness. That changed when I noticed Jackson in deep conversation with Walter Bennett. They stood near the bar, Jackson gesturing animatedly, while Walter listened with the evaluative expression of a man accustomed to being pitched ideas. When Jackson caught my eye, he straightened and whispered something to Walter. Then, to my surprise, they began walking directly toward me. My stomach tightened as Jackson approached with Walter Bennett. Something in Jackson's expression, a mixture of alcohol-induced confidence and smug satisfaction, warned me this encounter wouldn't be pleasant. "Walter wanted to meet the father of the bride," Jackson announced loudly, clapping a hand on my shoulder. His grip was too tight, his smile too wide. "This is Amanda's father, the unemployed loser I told you about. Been out of work for over a year now." The words hit me like physical blows. Around us, conversations halted abruptly. Emily, who had been chatting with a friend nearby, turned sharply, her face registering shock. Amanda, returning from the dance floor, froze mid-step. The silence that followed seemed endless. Blood rushed to my face as humiliation washed over me. In that moment, I felt completely exposed, my deepest insecurities broadcast to a room full of strangers, and worst of all, to my daughter on her wedding day. Jackson laughed awkwardly, as if expecting others to join in. "Just kidding, of course. Kevin here used to be in manufacturing before the industry collapsed." Walter Bennett studied me intently, his expression unreadable. He was tall and imposing, in an expertly tailored suit, the kind of man who commanded attention without effort. I expected to see dismissal in his eyes, maybe pity. Instead, I saw something unexpected: assessment. My first instinct was to walk away to escape this public humiliation. My second was to punch Jackson in his smirking face. I did neither. Something in Walter's steady gaze held me in place. "Unemployed." Walter finally spoke, his voice measured and deep. He extended his hand to me. "That's interesting. What field were you in exactly, Kevin?" I shook his hand, surprised by the firmness of his grip and the genuine interest in his question. "Manufacturing operations," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "I was operations director at Midwest Fabrication for 15 years before the offshore transition." "Midwest Fabrication," Walter repeated, his eyebrows rising slightly. "The aircraft components manufacturer. Yes, we specialized in precision components for commercial aircraft." "I'm familiar with the company." Walter nodded. "Their quality control systems were industry-leading. Were you involved in developing those protocols?" Jackson's smug expression faltered as Walter engaged me in serious conversation. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us. "Actually, yes," I said. "I oversaw the implementation of our integrated quality management system. We reduced defect rates by 78% over 5 years. Walter nodded appreciatively. "Impressive." The manufacturing sector has faced significant challenges with globalization. Many excellent professionals have been displaced through no fault of their own. Jackson tried to interject. "Walter, I think the band is playing your favorite." "One moment, Jackson." Walter said, his tone pleasant but firm. He turned back to me. "You know, I started my career in manufacturing before moving to finance. Always believed it was the backbone of real economic value creation." I couldn't believe what was happening. The CEO Jackson had been desperately trying to impress, was engaging me in a serious professional conversation, while Jackson himself was being effectively sidelined. The financial sector often misunderstands the complexities of modern manufacturing. I offered, gaining confidence. There's an assumption that it's simplistic work that can be done anywhere. But advanced manufacturing requires sophisticated knowledge ecosystems that take decades to develop. Walter smiled. "Exactly my thinking. Would you mind if we continued this conversation somewhere quieter? I'd love to hear more about your experience with supply chain integration." Before I could answer, he turned to Jackson. "Would you excuse us? Kevin and I have some interesting business matters to discuss." Jackson's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and alarm. "Of course," he managed, his voice tight. "But perhaps I could join." "No need," Walter cut him off smoothly. "Enjoy your wedding reception. Your father-in-law and I will just be a few minutes." As Walter led me away, I caught Emily's eye. She raised her eyebrows questioningly. I gave her a small, bewildered shrug in response. Whatever was happening, it certainly wasn't what Jackson had intended when he'd introduced me as an unemployed loser. Walter guided me to a quiet corner of the terrace overlooking the estate gardens. The evening air was cool and refreshing after the stuffy ballroom. For a moment we stood in silence, looking out at the manicured landscape. "Your son-in-law," Walter finally said, "has a promising future at Bennett Financial. Ambitious, technically skilled." "Yes," I agreed neutrally. "But that comment," Walter continued, shaking his head slightly, "reveals a troubling character flaw. Disrespect is often a symptom of deeper insecurities." I remained silent, unsure how to respond. Walter turned to face me directly. "I apologize for his behavior. It reflects poorly on our company culture, which I assure you does not condone such disrespect." "Thank you," I said simply. Walter leaned against the terrace railing. You know, I grew up in a manufacturing town in Pennsylvania. My father worked in a steel mill for 40 years. When I was getting my MBA, my professors talked about manufacturing as if it were a relic, something to be optimized away or outsourced. They didn't understand what my father taught me, that making things of value requires not just capital, but human knowledge and commitment. I nodded, surprised by his perspective. Let me be direct, Kevin. Bennett Financial is expanding our manufacturing division. We've acquired several mid-sized operations that need experienced leadership. I've been looking for someone with actual shop floor to boardroom experience to help integrate these acquisitions. My heart began to race as I realized where this conversation was heading. Would you be interested in discussing a position director level, overseeing operational integration across our new manufacturing portfolio? The irony was almost too perfect. Jackson's attempt to humiliate me had potentially opened a door I'd thought permanently closed. I would be very interested, I said carefully. Walter reached into his jacket and produced a business card. Call my office Monday morning. We'll set up a proper interview. I can't make promises, but I'm impressed by what I've heard about Midwest's operations, and our conversation confirms my instincts about your expertise. I took the card, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in months. One more thing, Walter added. I value loyalty and respect in business and in family. The way a person treats their family often reveals how they'll treat their colleagues. The implication was clear. Jackson's behavior tonight had not gone unnoticed by his ultimate boss. As we walked back to the reception, I saw Jackson watching nervously from across the room. Walter nodded cordially to him, but made his way to speak with other guests. Jackson immediately hurried over to me. "What did Walter want?" he asked, his tone a mixture of suspicion and alarm. I looked at my new son-in-law, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time not as the polished professional, but as an insecure young man whose worth was tied entirely to his status. We discussed manufacturing integration strategies, I said simply. He's quite knowledgeable about the industry. Jackson's face paled slightly. Did he mention me? Only briefly, I replied truthfully. For the remainder of the evening, the dynamic had shifted perceptibly. Walter made a point of introducing me to several of his executives as Kevin Morgan, the manufacturing operations expert. With each introduction, Jackson's expression grew more strained. Amanda noticed the change, but seemed confused by it. Emily, however, watched with barely concealed satisfaction, especially when Walter made a point of stopping by our table to say goodbye. "Looking forward to our conversation on Mondays, Kevin," he said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I think you might be exactly what we've been looking for." As he walked away, Emily squeezed my hand under the table. Her eyes said everything. Vindication, pride, hope. Jackson spent the rest of the evening casting anxious glances my way, his earlier confidence replaced by visible uncertainty. The tables had turned in a way neither of us could have anticipated when the night began. The Monday after the wedding, I found myself in the lobby of the Bennett Financial headquarters, dressed in my best suit, the same one I'd worn to the wedding. The receptionist greeted me with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Morgan, Mr. Bennett is expecting you, 15th floor." The elevator ride gave me time to gather my thoughts. I'd spent Sunday researching Bennett Financial's recent manufacturing acquisitions and developing ideas for operational integration. After more than a year of rejection, this unexpected opportunity felt almost dreamlike. Walter's assistant ushered me into a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Walter rose from behind his desk, extending his hand. "Kevin, good to see you." Coffee. The interview was unlike any I'd experienced. Rather than the standard questions about strengths and weaknesses, Walter engaged me in a detailed discussion about manufacturing operations, supply chain management, and leadership philosophy. He asked penetrating questions about my approach to workforce development and operational efficiency. "You've clearly thought deeply about these issues," he commented, after I explained my ideas for integrating divergent company cultures following acquisitions. "When you've been in the industry for 30 years, you develop strong opinions," I replied. Walter smiled. "Strong, informed opinions are exactly what we need. Our financial analysts understand spreadsheets but not shop floors. We need someone who speaks both languages." By the end of our 2-hour conversation, Walter's interest had crystallized into a concrete offer: Director of Manufacturing Operations Integration, overseeing the consolidation of Bennett's newly acquired production facilities. "The salary is negotiable," Walter said, sliding a document across the desk, "but I believe this is competitive." The figure on the page was 30% higher than my previous position. After 14 months of unemployment, it seemed almost unreal. "There's one more thing," Walter added, his expression turning serious. "You'll be working with various departments, including financial advisory. Jackson Pierce works in that division." I tensed slightly at the mention of Jackson's name. "I want to be clear," Walter continued. "Your relationship with your son-in-law played no role in this offer. If anything, I'd consider it a potential complication. Can you work professionally despite what happened at the wedding?" I considered the question carefully. "I can separate family matters from business. My daughter's happiness is important to me, which means finding a way to have a civil relationship with Jackson, regardless of our professional interactions." Walter nodded, satisfied. "Good, because I don't tolerate office politics or personal vendettas in my company. Whatever happens between you and Jackson stays outside these walls." I accepted the position on the spot. Walter suggested I take a week to prepare before starting, but I was eager to begin immediately. After months of forced inactivity, the prospect of meaningful work pulled at me like gravity. "Tomorrow it is," Walter agreed, seeming pleased by my enthusiasm. When I called Emily with the news, her joy burst through the phone. "I knew it. I knew someone would recognize your value eventually." "It's more than I could have hoped for," I admitted. "Better position, better compensation than Midwest." "Have you told Amanda?" I hesitated. "Not yet. I'm not sure how she'll take it, given that I'll be working with Jackson." Emily's voice softened. "She'll be happy for you, Kevin. Whatever Jackson's feelings, Amanda loves you and wants you to succeed." That evening, I invited Amanda and Jackson to dinner, planning to share my news in person. They arrived at the restaurant looking tired from their honeymoon travels, having returned just hours earlier. "Dad, you're looking well," Amanda commented, embracing me. "Something's different." Jackson shook my hand stiffly, his eyes wary. News traveled fast in corporate circles. He likely already suspected my reason for the dinner invitation. After ordering, I decided to address the situation directly. "I've accepted a position at Bennett Financial. I'll be starting tomorrow as Director of Manufacturing Operations Integration." Amanda's face lit up with genuine happiness. "Dad, that's amazing. Isn't that great news, Jackson?" Jackson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Congratulations. That's quite a coincidence." The implied accusation hung in the air between us. "It is a coincidence," I confirmed evenly. "Or rather, it's a consequence of an unexpected conversation with Walter Bennett, a conversation that wouldn't have happened without your introduction." Jackson flushed slightly. "About that, I'd had a few drinks. It was a poor attempt at humor." "Was it humor when you told your colleagues I was embarrassing? When you said you were keeping professional distance so Walter wouldn't think you came from that kind of background?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Amanda's expression shifted from confusion to hurt. "Jackson, what is my dad talking about?" Jackson swallowed visibly. "It was just talk. Office politics. You know how it is." "I don't actually." Amanda replied, her voice cooling. "Explain it to me." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table as Jackson struggled to respond. Finally, he sighed. "Look, I was wrong, okay? I was insecure about how my colleagues would perceive me. Financial services is all about projecting success, and I let that warp my judgment." It wasn't a full apology, but it was at least an acknowledgement. I decided to extend an olive branch. "We're family now, Jackson. That matters more than whatever happens at Bennett Financial. Walter made it clear that our personal relationship stays separate from work, and I intend to honor that." Jackson studied me for a moment, perhaps assessing my sincerity. "I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for what I said at the wedding. It was completely inappropriate." Amanda reached for both our hands across the table. "This is a fresh start for everyone. Dad has a great new position. We're beginning our marriage. Can we agree to move forward positively?" I squeezed her hand. "That's always been my intention." The tension gradually eased as we shifted to discussing their honeymoon. By dessert, Jackson had relaxed enough to ask genuine questions about my new role. Whether his interest stemmed from career calculation or sincere reconciliation, I couldn't tell. Either way, it was progress. My first day at Bennett Financial was a whirlwind of introductions, orientations, and preliminary meetings. My assistant Diane had prepared a detailed schedule and comprehensive briefing materials on the acquired manufacturing companies. "Mr. Bennett suggested I compiled these for you," she explained. "He said you'd want to dive right in." By lunchtime, I'd already identified several critical integration challenges. The manufacturing facilities Bennett had acquired operated on different systems with minimal standardization, exactly the kind of complex operational puzzle I excelled at solving. I spotted Jackson in the company cafeteria lunching with colleagues. He nodded professionally when our eyes met, but made no move to join or invite me over. I understood he needed to establish boundaries. Our paths wouldn't cross directly in daily work, but the company was small enough that complete avoidance would be impossible. In the following weeks, I immersed myself in the new position. Each day brought fresh challenges that engaged my expertise and experience. After months of questioning my value, the satisfaction of meaningful contribution was indescribable. I worked long hours rebuilding my professional identity and confidence with each successful project. Walter proved to be an exceptional boss, demanding but fair with genuine respect for manufacturing expertise. During our weekly meetings, he often asked penetrating questions that pushed me to refine my integration strategies. "You've made remarkable progress in just a month," he commented during one review. "The Parkson facility implementation is weeks ahead of schedule." "We have a strong team," I acknowledged. Once they understood the direction, they executed brilliantly. "Don't downplay your leadership, Kevin. Good teams become great with proper guidance." At home, Emily noticed the change in my demeanor. "You seem like yourself again," she observed one evening as we prepared dinner together. "The real Kevin Morgan is back." I didn't realize how much of my identity was tied to working, I admitted. Not just the paycheck, but the purpose, the sense of contributing something meaningful. "I never doubted you'd find your way back," she said, "even during your darkest days." The real test of my new professional situation came during a company-wide strategy meeting 6 weeks into my tenure. Department heads gathered to present quarterly results and upcoming initiatives. Jackson would be attending as part of the financial advisory team. I arrived early, setting up my presentation materials at one end of the conference table. Jackson entered with his colleagues, hesitating briefly when he saw me, before taking a seat at the opposite end. Our interaction was limited to professional nods. Walter opened the meeting by highlighting recent successes. "Our manufacturing division integration is proceeding exceptionally well under Kevin's leadership. The efficiency improvements are already exceeding projections." As I presented the manufacturing integration roadmap, I noticed Jackson watching intently. When I opened the floor for questions, he raised his hand. The capital expenditure for standardizing the production system seems high. Have you considered a phased approach? His question was professionally framed, but carried a subtle challenge. We analyzed both options, I responded evenly. The financial models show that while a phased approach has lower upfront costs, the total implementation expense increases by 27% due to prolonged system incompatibility. The comprehensive approach also accelerates our timeline for realizing efficiency gains. Jackson nodded, making a note. Thanks for the clarification. The models my team reviewed didn't factor in those compatibility costs. It was a small moment of professional respect, Jackson acknowledging the validity of my analysis rather than doubling down on his challenge. After the meeting, he approached me directly for the first time in our new workplace context. Your presentation was impressive, he said. I didn't realize how complex the integration challenges were. Manufacturing looks deceptively simple from the outside, I replied. It's only when you start connecting systems designed to different specifications that the complications emerge. An awkward silence followed before Jackson spoke again. Amanda was hoping we could come for dinner this weekend. She misses you and Emily. The invitation surprised me. We'd like that. Sunday work for you? He nodded. Sunday's perfect. And he paused, then added, I'm glad things are working out for you here, Kevin. I mean that. Whether his change in attitude stemmed from genuine growth or pragmatic career management didn't matter. What mattered was finding a path forward that preserved Amanda's happiness while allowing both Jackson and me our professional dignity. As weeks turned into months, my position at Bennett Financial solidified. The manufacturing integration progressed ahead of schedule, earning recognition from the board of directors. My team expanded as we took on additional projects. Jackson and I established a workable professional relationship, not close, but respectfully collaborative when our departments intersected. At family gatherings, we found neutral topics of conversation gradually building a civil foundation that eased Amanda's initial worry about tension between us. 6 months after the wedding, Emily and I hosted a dinner celebration at our home. Walter had approved my proposal for a new training initiative that would become a cornerstone of Bennett's manufacturing strategy. Amanda and Jackson arrived bearing champagne. Dad, I'm so proud of you, Amanda said, embracing me. Mom says you're revolutionizing their entire approach. Your father is doing exceptional work, Walter agreed, arriving moments later. He rarely attended personal gatherings, but had accepted our invitation with surprising enthusiasm. The manufacturing division has exceeded every projection under his leadership. Jackson, who had initially seemed tense about his boss attending a family dinner, gradually relaxed as the evening progressed. When Walter engaged him about a recent client acquisition, Jackson spoke, confidently demonstrating genuine skill and insight. After dinner, as Emily served coffee, Amanda shared news of her own. We have an announcement, she said, glancing at Jackson with a smile. We're expecting a baby in 7 months. The room erupted in congratulations. As Emily and Walter discussed grandparenting, Jackson pulled me aside. I owe you a real apology, he said quietly. Not just for the wedding, but for how I thought about you during your unemployment. I judged your worth by your job title, which was shallow and wrong. His earnestness surprised me. What changed your perspective? He glanced toward Amanda. Partly becoming a father myself. It's made me think about what values I want to pass on. He hesitated. And partly watching you these past months. You came into a difficult situation and succeeded through genuine expertise and hard work, not office politics or positioning. I've learned more from observing your approach than from any mentor program. His words felt like the closing of a circle that had begun with humiliation and now ended with unexpected respect. "Thank you, Jackson. That means a lot." Walter's voice interrupted our moment. "Kevin, I've been meaning to discuss our expansion plans with you. We're considering additional acquisitions in the aerospace components sector." "That's my original field," I noted with interest. "Precisely why I want your input before we proceed." As the conversation shifted to business possibilities, I caught Emily watching me with a knowing smile. She had witnessed my journey from career professional to unemployed loser, and now to respected executive and soon-to-be grandfather. The road had contained unexpected detours, but had ultimately led somewhere meaningful. Later that night, after our guests had departed, Emily and I sat on our porch swing, enjoying the evening air. "Quite a turnaround from last year," she observed. "From unemployed loser to director in 6 months." I agreed. "Not the career path I expected." "You know what I find most satisfying," Emily mused. "Jackson actually respects you now, not because you're his boss's favorite, or because of your title, but because he's seen your actual value." "People grow," I said. "Sometimes they need their worldview shaken up to see beyond superficial measures of worth." "Are you talking about Jackson or yourself?" she asked perceptively. "Both, I suppose. Losing my job forced me to question where my value really came from. Was I worthwhile only when employed? The months of rejection nearly convinced me I wasn't. But you never stopped being the same talented, experienced, intelligent man," Emily insisted. "The world just temporarily failed to recognize it." "The experience changed me," I admitted. "I'm more aware of how we judge others based on employment status, how deeply our identities are tied to our work. I've started mentoring some of the younger team members who feel insecure about their positions, helping them see their worth beyond their current role." Emily leaned against my shoulder. "From humiliation to wisdom. Not a bad journey in the end." "Not bad at all," I agreed, pulling her closer. "Though I could have done without the unemployed loser part." She laughed softly. "Without that moment, Walter might never have noticed you. Sometimes our worst experiences open doors we didn't know existed." Looking back over the tumultuous year, from the devastation of job loss, through the public humiliation at the wedding to unexpected career resurrection, I recognized a profound truth. Our value never resided in employment status or others' perceptions. It existed in our capacity to maintain dignity through adversity, to grow through painful experiences, and to find meaning beyond external validation. The journey had transformed not just my career, but my understanding of self-worth. The very public label of unemployed loser had ultimately led to a deeper recognition of what truly mattered and opened doors I'd thought permanently closed. 6 months after starting at Bennett Financial, my professional life had transformed beyond recognition. The manufacturing division I oversaw had exceeded growth projections for 2 consecutive quarters. Walter had expanded my responsibilities to include strategic planning for future acquisitions. My team respected my leadership, and colleagues from other departments increasingly sought my input on complex operational challenges. But the most meaningful transformation wasn't professional. It was personal. The experience of unemployment humiliation and unexpected redemption had fundamentally changed my perspective on what defined my worth as a person. On a crisp autumn evening, almost exactly a year after Amanda's wedding, Walter invited me to join him for dinner at the exclusive Riverside Club. Overaged Scotch, he made a surprising confession. "You know, Kevin, hiring you was one of my best decisions this year. Not just professionally, but personally." "How so?" I asked, curious. "My father worked in manufacturing his entire life. Walter explained, swirling his drink thoughtfully. Brilliant man, though formally uneducated. When I entered the financial world, I encountered countless executives who dismissed people like him as replaceable labor. I've spent decades trying to bridge that divide to make financial leaders understand the value of production expertise. He leaned forward. When Jackson introduced you as an unemployed loser, I saw more than a rude comment. I saw the dangerous arrogance that's hollowed out American business, the belief that those who move money matter more than those who make things. His candor surprised me. That's a perspective rarely voiced in financial circles. Which is precisely why I needed someone like you in leadership, Walter replied. Your success here is changing minds about the value of manufacturing experience. Our conversation shifted to family matters. Walter asked about Amanda's pregnancy and seemed genuinely pleased when I shared the latest ultrasound photos. And how are things with Jackson? He inquired. Improving, I answered honestly. We've found common ground as colleagues, and he's genuinely excited about becoming a father. The edge of status anxiety that defined him at the wedding has softened considerably. Walter nodded approvingly. I've noticed changes in his approach as well. Less focused on appearances, more on substance. Your influence, perhaps. I'd like to think it's mutual growth, I suggested. The wedding incident forced both of us to reconsider our assumptions. Later that week, Amanda and Jackson invited us for dinner at their new home. Jackson had recently been promoted to senior advisor, partly due to his work on a project where our departments had collaborated successfully. Emily and I arrived bearing gifts for the nursery, a handcrafted wooden rocking chair I'd made in my newly established workshop. Woodworking had become my weekend passion, a tangible counterbalance to the strategic work that filled my weekdays. Dad, it's beautiful, Amanda exclaimed, running her hand over the smooth maple armrests. Your father has hidden talents, Emily informed her. The garage has transformed into a proper workshop. Jackson examined the joinery with genuine appreciation. This craftsmanship is remarkable. How long did it take you to build? About 6 weekends, I replied. There's something deeply satisfying about creating something tangible, something that will last. I understand that now more than I used to, Jackson admitted. Before working with your division, I saw manufacturing as just numbers on spreadsheets. Now, I appreciate the actual creation process. Over dinner, our conversation flowed more naturally than ever before. When Amanda excused herself briefly, Jackson turned to me with unexpected seriousness. I need to say something that's been on my mind, he began. My behavior at our wedding introducing you as an unemployed loser. It wasn't just rude or thoughtless. It revealed something ugly about how I measured human value. The directness of his acknowledgement caught me off guard. With the baby coming, he continued, I've been thinking about what values I want to pass on. I don't want my child learning to judge people by their job title or employment status. That's a valuable realization, Jackson, I said quietly. Working alongside you these past months has been eye-opening, he admitted. You've shown more integrity and earned more genuine respect than anyone I've encountered in my career. Not through position or politics, but through actual knowledge and character. When Amanda returned, she immediately sensed something significant had transpired. Everything okay? More than okay, I assured her. Your husband was just sharing some thoughtful reflections about work and values. She glanced between us, pleased, but slightly puzzled by the apparent closeness that had replaced our former tension. Actually, Jackson added, I was apologizing properly for my behavior at our wedding and thanking your father for not holding it against me professionally, which he would have been entirely justified in doing. Amanda's eyes widened. You two have come a long way from that awful moment. Life has a way of rearranging our perspectives, I observed, sometimes through difficult lessons. After dinner, as Emily helped Amanda with dessert, Jackson showed me the nursery they were preparing. The walls were painted a soft green with space allocated for the rocking chair. "We found out yesterday," Jackson said quietly. "It's a boy." "Congratulations," I replied warmly. "Have you thought about names?" He hesitated briefly. "Actually, we were thinking of Kevin. Amanda suggested it, but I immediately agreed. If that's okay with you." The unexpected gesture touched me deeply. I'd be honored. When we shared the news with Emily and Amanda, Emily's eyes filled with tears. The moment crystallized how far we had all come from that painful wedding introduction from public humiliation to family healing. In the months that followed, I continued mentoring younger colleagues who faced professional uncertainty. My experience had given me unique insight into the psychological impact of career disruption and the importance of maintaining self-worth through professional transitions. One young engineer, recently transferred from a closed facility, particularly benefited from our conversations. "I was starting to think my career was over at 32, he confessed during one of our sessions. "I thought the same at 55, I told him. "The key is remembering that your value extends beyond your current employment situation." Walter noticed these mentoring relationships and formally established a transition support program with my input. "Your experience makes you uniquely qualified to guide others through career upheaval," he explained. "That's knowledge we can't afford to waste." When my grandson Kevin was born on a snowy February morning, the entire family gathered at the hospital. Holding the tiny boy in my arms, I felt a profound sense of life's continuity and the meaningful connections that transcended professional identity. Jackson stood beside me, watching his son with awe. "I want to teach him what really matters," he said softly. "Not titles or status, but character and genuine contribution." "You will," I assured him. "Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from our own mistakes and growth." Emily squeezed my free hand. From unemployed loser to revered grandfather and mentor. Quite a journey. The label never defined me, I realized aloud. It just revealed the limitations of the person applying it. Limitations Jackson has worked hard to overcome. "We all have our blind spots," Amanda observed, watching her husband with obvious pride. "What matters is recognizing and addressing them." Looking around at my family, Emily, Amanda Jackson, and now little Kevin, I understood that my greatest triumph wasn't landing the director position or proving my professional value. It was maintaining my dignity through adversity, forgiving without forgetting, and ultimately helping transform a painful moment of humiliation into an opportunity for growth, not just for myself, but for Jackson as well. The journey from being publicly labeled an unemployed loser to finding renewed purpose had taught me that our value never resides in job titles or others' perceptions. It exists in our resilience through difficulties, our capacity for growth, and our willingness to help others find their way through similar challenges. If you've ever been underestimated, judged solely by your employment status, or publicly humiliated, I hope my story offers some comfort and perspective. Our lowest moments often contain the seeds of unexpected opportunities and meaningful growth. The key is maintaining your dignity and remaining open to possibilities, even when they come from unlikely sources. I'd love to hear about your experiences with professional setbacks and unexpected comebacks. Have you ever been underestimated only to prove someone wrong? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please subscribe and hit that like button to help others find this message of hope and resilience. Remember, you are always more than your job title or employment status. A lesson my son-in-law and I both learned through one awkward introduction and its surprising aftermath.